So welcome to How to Coach 3 Conversations. So my name is Michelle Stanley, and I am a coach and a psychotherapist. I have a background in yoga, and I'm super excited to be bringing this class to you all. So this class and this coaching process is about giving you the opportunity to figure out really what you want for your life in the areas of your own personal development or your personal growth, your relationships, as well as your career. Again, coaching is borrowing from both consulting and therapy. And it's, as you see here, it's falling right in the middle. So what coaching is it's both for individuals as well as businesses, as well as for groups. It can be involving goal setting and management. It does have ethics. It does include individual ethics as well as organizational ethics. The thing about coaching, and it might be different than therapy, that's a great opportunity for us to consider, is that sometimes and often if you get a coaching contract with a business, which in our coaching school, because the ICF coaching certification is expensive, I'll tell you that right now, our coaching certification class is $6,400, that a lot of individuals who come through our school get their coaching certification paid for by their company. So you can also start making more money when your client is the organization versus your client is the client and they're paying out of their pocket. So federal government, a lot of federal government employees have like training budgets, and coaching is such a great avenue for that because it is helping people to develop and maximize their potential. Some of the differences between coaching and therapy: therapy does tend to focus on the past. Therapy diagnoses and treats dysfunction, whereas coaches stay out of the realm of diagnosing and assessing. They don't do that. They're not supposed to do that. That's not their realm. That doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge like sadness or emotions, but I would say that one of the differences between coaching and therapy is how you relate to emotions. So as a therapist, you might hear somebody like experiencing anxiety, experiencing depression, and you might like explore that with them. How long has it been happening? When did you notice it start? What are all the symptoms of it? Therapy. As in coaching, you're not assessing, you're not saying like, oh, that sounds like depression. You might say like, okay, if emotion comes up in the session, you ask them, is it important for you to share more about that? Or is it important for you to spend a moment with that emotion? And give the client the opportunity to sit with, express, identify, acknowledge, or even feel the emotion in the session. But one of the differences between coaching and therapy is that in coaching, the purpose of the emotion is not for catharsis. It is to acknowledge or even to vent the emotion so that they can either let it go or move on from it or gain intuition from it. The point of using emotions in the coaching session is not to like go into it and like swim in it. It's to use it for your own insight. And so I think that that's one of the things that I have found that's been really empowering about coaching, is it gives me the opportunity to relate to emotions differently in the session. All right, so I said this before, but this is just a different way that, why is my screen cutting off? Is that this is just one of the ways that we can work. So I don't know why this is cutting off there. I'll try to move it, but basically it's saying that coaches can work in the individual realm, like individual process, like what's going on with the individual, what's going on inside of them. They can also work on the individual and outside relationship, which is the individual and how they're experiencing, for example, their organization or their experience in their cultural situation or in a social group. And then the other part of it, or, in a work group. So that's individual exterior. And then in this other part, there's two realms of the collective experience. So if you're working with the cultural group, it might be the organization within itself. But another realm of coaching niche is the organization in relationship to other organizations. So something that is going to be helpful for you all to think about and figure out is which realm of coaching do you want to be focused on? Sometimes as mental health professionals, and I really like this as social work, when we get in the mental health field, we're sometimes working on the individual relationship, which is one-to-one. But it's sometimes really exciting for me, and I know Alyssa, we've been talking about this a lot, is that it's exciting to be able to shift from working and focusing on individuals to groups, groups and organizations, organizations to other organizations. So once you learn this skill, coaching your friends, families, and clients, I want you to understand that the same coaching process can then be applied to these other layers so that you can start to be clear about who your niche is and what level you really want to be working with people on. All right, so here's some of the challenges that make us unfulfilled, overworked, and underpaid. So number one is that we are not clear on the goal or on the results that we want for our own life. So I'm gonna ask you all through this process to begin to think about what is the goal, or I always say this word, what is the worthwhile result that will be important for you, that would let you know that this coaching or like whatever the next step is in your business, whether it's getting out of your job, whether it's starting a coaching practice, what would let you know that it was the right step for you? What would you need to see what result would you need to see to know that you're moving in the right direction? So the second problem is that we get stuck in understanding, like I said, in exploring the problem, and we don't focus on moving forward after that. So again, sometimes therapy focuses a lot on clarity, understanding about the issue, why it happened, whereas coaching is about what next. All right, now and you can, sometimes one of the things we'll ask a client in a session is, sometimes I'll say like, oh, I wonder why I do that. And rather than like jump right into like, well, like, you know, why do you do that? Or that's a really good question. You ask them, do you think it's important for you? Do you think it's important for you to understand the why? And you'd be surprised. So coaching is very much about like being intentional. Again, you don't just go somewhere with a client. It's very collaborative. So before you go in a direction, you ask them, is this the direction you want to go? So when you ask the client, is it important for you to understand the why? You'd be surprised to find out that a lot of times clients will say, you know, I realize I'm about to go there, but it's actually not important to me, or I don't want to do that right now, or I don't need your help to do that. I do that all the time with my friends, with my family, in my journal. I don't need your help to understand the why. I'd rather use you to figure out what next. And so that's a really like nice place to be able to get unstuck. All right, so number 3, this is a really big one. The third problem that happens that makes us overworked, unfulfilled, and underpaid is that we are confusing validation for value. And there are so many ways that we get stuck in that. Not just our clients get stuck in that, but we as professionals get stuck in that. We seek out clients, we seek out opportunities that are validating something that we are insecure about, rather than asking ourselves, is this really what I want, what my highest self wants for my life? Is this really what I want if I am aligned with my highest potential? Is this really what I would want if I am aligned with what I desire, what I really am seeking to gain in this next year? Is this in alignment with that? All right, great. So I do see some questions here. All right, so Nadine, you're asking how I might sit. All right, great. So I'm gonna come back to that question. And I see some really good questions here. But I'm gonna come back and I will get to that question about sitting with the emotion. All right, so here's some important things about coaching. So why learn to coach a conversation? So number 1 The ICF, which is again the biggest like credentialing federation that there is, has done some research on this. It says that people that invest in coaching tend to get 3.44 times their investment in coaching. So on their return on that investment, they get 3.44 times a return on their investment. So that's a really good incentive to think about when you think about coaching individuals and organizations, is that they might be making an investment, but what they're going to get back from it is more than 3 times the return on what they're investing financially. And then the second thing is that not only are they going to get a higher ROI, but according to Forbes, professional coaching has resulted in a 77% improvement in relationships, a 67% improvement in teamwork, and a 61% improvement in job satisfaction. And so when we start to like think about this, when we think about our value to our companies that we work with, I'm telling people the coaching market is so saturated. And so I'm not telling you all to throw yourselves into the ocean of 100,000 coaches that are out there. But I do think that a really great place to start is to start having a different conversation with your employee, with your colleagues, about how you can start offering more value to your clients, to your friends, to your family, to your organizations by bringing these coaching skills into your conversations, into your work, and into your life. All right? Okay. All right, let me see. Move, please move. All right, so this is a really good one too. So coaching compared to therapy. Some people, there's a lot of coaches out there that are not getting paid a lot. But like I said, when you can start using coaching and not just going, working with clients to pay out of their pocket, you can start working with organizations. The median, meaning the number that is most occurring in the middle, meaning there's numbers on the higher end and numbers on the lower end, is $500 an hour for coaches. So consider that when you think about, we're not talking about needing to do this full time. We're talking about starting with a profitable side hustle. And on the low end, a lot of coaches, they say like this was taken from say coaches in Manhattan, make around the low 200s. And on the higher end, they make around the high 2000s per hour. My cousin is an executive coach. He charges $6,000 an hour per session. So just an idea of like what the value is of coaching because of those things. Oopsies. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Like I said, we're gonna be covering 3 areas: self, relationships, and career. And what we're going to be doing with the self is we're going to be removing your own self limitations to growth and abundance mindset. And why that is because coaching requires that we are coming from abundance mindset as opposed to a fear mindset. Because if you're thinking from a fear mindset, how are you going to come up with your best solutions? If your client is stuck in fear mindset, how can they come up with their best solutions? So we want to be able to not just tap the client's abundance mindset, but you need to understand that for yourself so that you can help the client and collaborate with them and meet them so they can join you in that abundance mindset. And the second part of our process today is going to be about how you can use the coaching process to increase your own return on your investments. I say that's reciprocity in your personal and professional relationships. And then the third part is we're going to be committing to evolving our life through purpose. And why did I say intimacy? I don't mean intimacy in the romantic sense. I mean intimacy in the way that you have to connect to yourself. You have to bring that connected, confident, competent self into your relationships, both personally and professionally. And it is that connection of bringing your lovable self, your valued self into your relationships and getting that relationship synergy. It is that relationship with you, yourself, and other people that allows you to evolve in community with other people, which is such an important thing right now because we are in this COVID pandemic. The world is on lockdown. The way forward I really see is that it is about community and being able to strengthen and empower people. And coaching is a skill that anybody can learn. So when we can start to teach people how to coach, not just in the mental health realm, in the justice field, in the education field, in the medical field, what do all of them have in common? In sales even, is that often nobody is actually listening. And we are not often working in those relationships in a way that is collaborative, in a way that is empowering. So when we can start to teach people how to coach in the world, we really start to empower ourselves and our communities. All right? All right, so here's the first thing that we're gonna be working on. The first mistake of the tendency to enable people instead of empowering them. And so when we are doing that, we are actually not allowing ourselves to nurture the high potential of the client because we are almost cutting the relationship off at the knees by what we know or what we understand. And remember, one of the top reasons that coaches are engaged is to develop high potential or sometimes facilitate transition, whether that's up or down. So you need to understand how to develop a potential that has not yet been known or seen. It's hidden or it's kind of submerged. So that is why we need to be able to empower, because sometimes the client doesn't know or see the potential in themselves. And so we have to engage with that highest understanding of that self through abundance mindset so that they can start to tap into that and develop their own potential. And the idea here is that by us understanding our own individual potentials coaches, is that we can also start to evolve through the coaching relationship. All right, so we're gonna get into our first practice, which is about how to listen for light bulb moments. Okay, so, I'm gonna have to get out if that keeps happening. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we are going to understand these are the 5 things that I'm gonna be showing you. This is the big 5. And this last one that got cut out is about attending to the client's energy. So I just came out of my, that view for a moment so that you can see the entire slide. Attending to the client's energy. So number 1, we have the focus. So what is it that the client is focusing on? And so I'm gonna ask you in this first exercise of listening for light bulb moments to practice noticing what the client is focused on, understanding that sometimes what the client is focusing on may or may not be what is important. Number 2, you're gonna be looking for what is the attitude or the limiting beliefs or assumptions the client is making. So again, this is not about intervening or challenging or confronting them. It's about just looking for it, because these things are going to influence how the client processes and moves through the coaching session. Number 3, you're going to be listening for the skills and the capacity. Number 4, the habits and the patterns. And number 5, you're going to be attending to the client's energy. All right. So I'll come back to this, but I just wanted to give you an overview, or that these are the things that as a coach, you learn to listen for, so that you know what to respond to in the actual session. All right. Okay, so we're gonna start with the practice of how to create light bulb moments. And I said that that's a process of listening. Okay, so these are the 3 R's, I'll call them, of confidence clarity. So the 3 R's of confidence clarity are release, refine, and reinvent. And so what that means is that when you are sometimes starting off on something, you are, again, focused on what you want, focused on what you're afraid of, focused on like all the times it didn't work. So in order to get to like confidence on what you want and what you're good at, you have to get over or release that focus on the fear on what you don't want. So that is one of the things that we're going to start also thinking about as we start to listen in our first session, is what is actually desired or wanted versus what is feared or what we're concerned about. And number 3, we're going to start, after we let go or we get the fear out of the way, you're going to start discerning what you want. So the second question I'm going to guide you to, but it's not yet, is the first question that we often ask in coaching is, what do you want to focus on? And I say that to say that often in a session, if you do not, or in a meeting, if you don't ask the members of the group or people that are in a meeting that you're having, what they actually want to be focusing on, they may not actually know, or they may not actually be clear on what they want to be focused on. They're just talking. So the step number 2 in order to have confidence clarity is, what is it that you want and what is it that you want to focus on? And then the step 3 about confidence clarity, the 3rd R, is about reinventing. So once you understand what is the focus, then it's like, all right, now the session is going to start. Now we do work on the thing that you have already identified that you want to focus on. However, one of the challenges is that often when we do a session, it takes them a long time to figure out what they want to focus on. So I'm going to show us how to do this and how we might experience that in a session. Okay, so we're about to get into our practice here. All right, so here is what our first practice is going to be. I will come back to the screen in a moment when we break out into our groups, but we're going to be asking each other. I know that you all wrote it in the chat box, but you can ask, you don't need to ask the question, but I want you all to know that you're answering these 2 things. What is it that you want to gain from today? And what is it that stops you or gets in your way? So you're going to break into dyads or pairs. And I actually see that I cannot verbally speak to you while you're in those groups. But this is the questions that you all are going to be answering. I'm going to set a timer. And when the first thing you're going to do when you get into a group is you're going to identify who is the speaker and who is the listener. And I will give you, go ahead and get started. I might be able to give you some messaging to get started. And one person is going to talk about what they want to gain, not just from today, but what they're trying to figure out in their life. Some of you that I talked to, I asked you to think about something you want to get from this class. So talk about that. And then I want you to talk about what's getting in your way. So these 2 things. The person that is listening is going to practice what we call silent coaching. And when we silently coach, we actually do not say anything. Nothing, 0, zilch. But what we are doing is we are showing that we are listening through our body language and our nonverbal communication. And why we want to do that is that one of the first premises of our coaching school is about teaching you how to use and have a thinking environment, and how to create a thinking space for your clients. And so if you are constantly jumping in and answering questions and peppering your client, they actually don't have the space to think, And it can be a very actually disempowering situation. Quick little check-in. How can I have some people share? You can take yourself off mic if you want. Share about anything that came up for you that either was like familiar or was interesting, new, different, the same, anything that anybody can share about their experience with silent coaching.
I would like to share. This is Claudia. Just was interesting as well. You know, in switching, it seems like there's this common theme about fear, fear of failure, or fear of success, or fear of being inadequate. And it was so interesting to me because the person I was speaking with, by all regards, would say is very confident and all that. And so it's surprising to hear about fear. And I also thought the silent coaching really, really elicits more information than maybe even asking questions, right? People are more willing to talk, perhaps if they're not being asked questions. I thought it was very interesting. It was really useful to do the breakout one-on-one.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Claudia. And so did anybody else have that in their group? Did anybody else, like show of hands, have fear come up in their group, whether it was with them or with their partner? Yeah. So I just want to, like, you guys can all see, like, I don't know if you have gallery view on, it's hard for me to do it because I have the PowerPoint, but we see that there's a huge show of hands. So I just want to acknowledge we're not alone. So when you're thinking about working with people, you can almost 90% be sure that the very first thing that they are trying to do is overcome their fear. And so when we talk about cultivating abundance mindset is coming from the opposite of fear, which is love and possibility. And so we are now going to be talking about overcoming fear. And that is often what coaching is about. People often think that like coaching is just about the results and getting answers, but it is actually usually about helping people to overcome the fear. And so I'm going to ask you all to go back into the groups. I'm going to do so I'm going to ask you to move into this next question, which is, what would you like to focus on, or what would you like to do some thinking about? All right, so I'm going to ask you all I'll put you back into the rooms and you're going to ask those questions. But in terms of what we're experiencing right here, I'm going to show you the 5 levels of listening. And this is also part of our like training course, is that level 1 listening is actually not listening, it's interrupting. And that's why we teach you silent coaching, is because we want you to give the client the thinking space. And if you are even sometimes responding as soon as they like finish talking, that's level 2, which is waiting. I'm waiting for you to finish talking so that I can say what I want to say or what I think is important to say. And so level 3 is mirroring, but it requires that you first give the client space to think. All right. So level 3 mirroring is what we're going to practice now. And so what mirroring is simply mirroring what you hear the person say. So it's basic communication, do not what you think about what the person says, or what your assess or what your opinion is. And I know some of you all that are in my supervision group know that I did this exercise with therapists, and we had the worst time at like being able to mirror, because what I heard happening was that we have a tendency to reflect what the person is saying back in a way that encapsulate what they're saying in a problem form. So if I say, oh, I had a really tough day today, I was like really thinking a lot about, all the things that I could have done better. And I really just like couldn't like let this one situation that happened, like I couldn't let it go. The therapist might reflect back, okay, so it sounds like you're experiencing a lot of anxiety and worry and concern. And then like one of the person that was listening was like, no, I didn't say anything about worry, anxiety, and concern. So it's important here that we don't reflect things back in a problematic way, that we reflect things back using the language of the client, okay? Which requires that you pay attention, all right? So your question is going to be asking the person, that you're in the room with, because they just share that, like, what their fear are and what they're afraid of. And so you are going to ask them, you're going to mirror, and if you need to mirror some more, but you're going to gently keep asking the question, what would you like to focus on or do some thinking about? And it usually is in regards to that fear. All right. So this I'm going to give you, this is the basic 3-step coaching structure for a session. Every session is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you see here, the focus is in the beginning. This is what helps us transition to the meat of the session. But in order to do any work on anything, you have to be clear on what is the focus. So your next prompt is simply, what would you like to focus on? Another question, and I'll put it up. What would you like to do some thinking about? Give your person the time to answer. And then when they stop, you give them space to think. The only thing you are doing is asking that question, what do you want to focus on or do some thinking about? And you are doing this step 3 of mirroring. All right, that's it. And you're going to get 2.5 minutes. I know some of you had 3 people in a room. I think I should be able to put you all 2 people in a room. Does everybody understand the exercise? If you do not, or you have questions.
Actually, hi, I have a question.
All right, welcome back. So anyone, can anybody share about how that was? So this is a 3-step coaching process. I'm going over how a coaching session, just by simply having 3 parts, a beginning, a middle, and an end, can actually help a client to get pretty good traction. And so all we've done here is we have asked the client one question, which is, what is it that you want to focus on? So Erica's question was, do you reflect, when you're reflecting and mirroring, do you say, I hear you say, or do you say you're saying? So I would say that it depends. There's no right or wrong answer. I would say the answer depends on the amount of trust that you have built with a client. Remember, the foundation of coaching is trust. And so I've noticed that for clients that do not trust you, they can get stuck on whether you're understanding exactly what they said. Because people, if you are not being understood, they are often not in a position to receive advice, influence, or even be open with you if they don't think they're being understood. So I have seen from my own clients that sometimes they get stuck on, like, well, I actually said this word and I not said that word, and it's a matter of trust. And as you start to build trust in your relationship with the client, they start to become more flexible about whether you're matching their language exactly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Any questions or any experience? Can I have a show of hands? Did anybody feel like they identified with what their partner was saying? They felt like they wanted to give some snaps, I got you. Did anybody have that experience? Like they really identified with what their partner was saying? Yeah. Okay. So a few people had that experience. So I just want to say that that's normal. And the professional, so one idea is that sometimes I think coaches become unprofessional because they feel that way and they start to overshare. So again, I want to remind you that one definition of life coaching is that you use your life experience to be able to help clients maximize their own personal and professional potential. So one of the differences between therapy and coaching is the use of self-disclosure. But the point about it in coaching is that you use self-disclosure only when it is beneficial to the client. The session is still centered around the client. So one of the things that you can say is like, again, always asking permission. I have an experience with this that might be helpful. Would you like for me to share it? And sometimes you can see, like, sometimes clients are like, yes, please share it. And sometimes a client just said to me today, I was talking to something, I identified with her. I said, do you think it would be helpful? I identify what you're saying. Do you think it would be helpful for me to share? I can share that with you if you want. And she said, no, I actually think I get it. It makes sense. You don't need to share it. And so I was like, okay, like moving on. So I just wanted to share that, like, that's a way to use that opportunity. And sometimes we're feeling something, but it may not be what's aligned with what the client needs. Okay. So I hope that we were able to all get focused. Show of hands, did we all find out something that would be beneficial for us to focus on in our session? Show of hands. Okay, great. And the idea here is we want to have crystal clarity about that focus. So one of the things that I said to you all, and you see here, this is the 3-step coaching process. In it, the beginning is about focus and intention. You get to the focus and intention, and that's right here. And in the middle, when you use this intentional communication process, you're allowing the client to think, but you are always asking them to refer back to that focus. So they're going to think and they're going to talk, and you're always asking them, how does that relate back to your focus? What does that have to do with your focus? You're talking about chocolate chip cookies right now. What does that have to do with you getting a new job? It may have not, you can sometimes say, you're talking about chocolate chip cookies right now. So I just want to check in. Is the focus still about getting a new job, or has the focus changed? So you do not have to hold on to the focus that the client identified like a pit bull to the bone, but you allow the client to move. And if their focus moves, that's okay. You move with them. But you say, oh, the client might say, oh, no, chocolate chip cookies does have something to do with my focus because I'm thinking about going into a baking business. Oh, okay, great. Thanks for bringing me along. So, okay, go on. Tell me about this business you want to have with chocolate chip cookies. But sometimes it might be the client got distracted. So that's one of the reasons why we don't think is we just got distracted. And so if you say, you're talking about chocolate chip cookies now, has the focus changed, or are we still talking about your job? And they say, oh, you're right. I totally got distracted on these chocolate chip cookies, but actually I do want to actually talk about that now. Or no, let's go back to the job. So you're always bringing them back to that, okay? So does everybody understand how that works? And it's simple and it's clear how you can start using this in your conversations. All right, so let me move on. This is just basically something very simple about a new model and an old model of coaching. Let me see if I can move you all down. So a counseling paradigm was more about like following the client sessions, let the client lead the session. It's very client-centered, means like you kind of go where the client goes. You might investigate the drama. You might allow an emotional state to unfold. You might explore a sabotaging pattern. You might allow like the point of the session never to occur or never to get clear, and just have the whole 50 minutes go by and never know if there was a point. You might stumble onto intuition and not know whether it was really useful or helpful. And so in a coaching paradigm, it's that the coach is actually driving the session by creating a structure. And the structure that I'm giving you today is just a very simple structure of beginning, middle, and end. You're not going to investigate the drama. You're going to remove the drama. You're not going to allow the emotional state. You're going to manage the emotional state, and you're going to contain it and allow them to get insight from it. So I'm going to share about what that looks like. We're not going to have time to like really practice that because it's a little bit, it's considered like a master level coaching skill, but I'm going to show you how that works. And then the idea is that you're going to encourage the client to tap into their own insight. And so in the old paradigm, the counselor or the coach does a lot of heavy lifting. They are the ones that's responsible for orchestrating the insight in the session. In the new paradigm, the client is the one that's doing all of the heavy lifting. And that the idea here is that this is something that coaches can do, that counselors can do, that leaders can do, and that managers are also encouraged. We're encouraging them to switch to doing this like heavy lifting, to being central stage in their meetings, to having, they say that one of the things about leaders is they are the workhorse of their organization. They're doing a lot of the work. Their relationships are drain gain. So this is a coaching paradigm that you can also apply for managers and leaderships. And it's how you also start to get your colleagues and your team members more involved in the results and in the process. All right, so one of the things that you all have the opportunity to have here is a life design plan, which is really about, as you all got to see, that for yourselves, this was really about like overcoming fear and identifying a focus. And so you had the option when you signed up for this class, and you'll have it again, to get the life design plan, which is giving you a way to structure your life in the areas of self-care or self-development, career, and relationships around what you have identified is the focus or the goal or the result that you want to have. So you have a result, but in order to get to the result, there's something that you're trying to focus on first. And that's an intent. And when you decide what you focus on, that is called an intention. And so the life design plan, which you all is going to be part of the program, but you all get to have it after this class, is a way of doing this self-coaching in your own life, where you start aligning your life with what you are trying to, the result that you are trying to achieve. So I'm just keep that in mind, and that's going to be one of the things that you all are going to gain after you finish this session, and some of you already purchased it before. All right.
Michelle, are you changing the slides? It sounds like you're.
Oh,
looking, but the only thing we're seeing is the 3-step coaching structure. It's been on that for a while.
thank you. Yes, I am changing the slide. Let me see what happened. Oh, stop share. Okay, how about now?
Yep, it just moved to intuition versus insight.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. All right, yeah, stop sharing. Okay, so let's get into the second part, which is about, this is about intentional communication. Like I said, intentional communication is simply referring the person back to their actual focus, all right? And so this is where we get to level 4 and level 5 listening. And level 4 listening is using something called sensing. And I'm just going to go through what that is. And this is what you'll learn if you choose to continue to do some work with me, or come to the school, or come do the program that we're doing. It's helping the client to sharpen their intuition by being able to use what's happening in the session to ask them to reflect on it. And so some of you that are in therapy or have done mental health work know that it's similar to process work, but it is not psychodynamic therapy. So for example, if you notice that the client is saying, I'm really excited to be moving to California. This was my coaching session. And then you're like, great, like you're excited to be moving to California. Okay, like, what are you excited about? And then the next thing you know, like the client's like, well, I guess I'm excited about like the weather. So one of the things about sharpening intuition, using in the session, is you can say like, you're talking about being very excited, but your body language just showed something else. And you're not assessing, you look sad, you look depressed, you don't look like you're excited. You're just saying, you slumped in your seat. Your voice went down, you slumped down, your tone changed. What was there, is there anything that was coming up for you there? So you're just reflecting to the client their own process. And so they start coaching themselves oh, like I guess I didn't even realize that I was slumping down in my seat. And so this is an example of what we call level 4 or level 4 coaching, where you start coaching based on not just what the client is saying, but what their nonverbal language is communicating in the session. And so I like this idea about intuition versus insight. So intuition is like what is coming from within the client. It might be based on past experiences. It could be like survival instincts. It could be like, like tapping into like, trauma. It could be also tapping into like resource. But insight is the ability to like see something that has yet to become clear. And so I just want to acknowledge that this is a process that clients often have within themselves, but we don't know how to access that. So this is one that I've used before. This is an example of insight. It can make a quick and intelligent association and see the big picture that is beyond the words. So if I say this here, what do cottage, cake, and cloth all have in common?
Cheese.
Ding, ding, ding. Cheese, right? So that is a great example of like being able to see like beyond the word. So a high level, we call this master coaching, but it's also what we teach in our 3rd level of coaching, is like often a client is going to share 3 things, but they all have a common thread. And so a level 5 coach or a level 5 leader can often take the entire like problems of the group and say, there's one common theme here, and reflect it back and say, is this the thing that you as a team need to work through? And they will be able to be like, boom, yes, that's it. We all feel that. That was a clear way to say it. Let's go. Same thing with your client. When you can start to see yourself see, it helps them to use the insight and also to go deeper and to go quicker. And so that's also how we can start getting results. So one of the things that is going to be coming up in September is I'm going to be doing a training with Marcus Bird, who wrote the book, the 3-Minute Coach. And he's going to be teaching us how to get insights, how to get results from your client, from a conversation in 3 minutes. If you all are interested in checking out the book, it's called The 3-Minute Coach. All right, so I'm gonna shift to the last part, and then I'm gonna actually start to close us out. So this is just a brief understanding of what intuition is. I'm gonna ask you all to go into, we're not going to get into we kind of did a little bit of what's holding you back. We know that it's fear. I'm going to go into the last part of your questioning, and this is part of the end part of the session. So again, this is just giving you a way to use a 3-step process. In the end, you might be able to say like, what are some, actually, no, we're not at the end yet. We're going to do the middle, and then I'll talk through the end with you all. So the middle, we're going to be doing some reflecting on what is the focus of the session. So we all should have a focus. Here's the questions you're going to ask your partner. What do you know so far? You can ask the client to generate 10 to 12 possibilities, or even 25, or you can brainstorm with the client. Why can't I move this? And the idea about brainstorming, and coaches do this, is that like they give an idea, you give an idea. They don't have to do any of them. It's just about generating ideas. So I want you to practice doing this with your partner. And this is going to be our last exercise, and then I'll bring us back together. So you're going to take about 2.5 minutes, and you don't need to ask all of these questions, but keep in mind the focus, and then talk about, you can ask them one of these things. What do you know so far, or what are your ideas about that focus? Or what are 10 or 12 possibilities that you have about how you can move through that? Or brainstorm. Okay, does everybody understand this prompt. Okay. The only other tool you're using is mirroring. So if you ever get stuck or don't know what to say, you always fall back on silent coaching, breathing, and non-verbally communicating. If you feel like you're vibing with a client, you understand, or they're getting stuck, or they're like not thinking, you can mirror for them, like what their focus is, or mirror the of what they just said.
I'll come in.
Okay. All right, here we go. Free giveaway, which is the art of coaching. So if you can stick in there just for another 10 minutes, I'll be able to put that up. So you all had the opportunity to work through what is the middle part of a session. And the idea here is that we are expanding the client. So like I said, one of the things about trusting in the coaching process is trusting in the container of the coaching conversation. So the container is that at the beginning, we start narrow by identifying a focus, and then you expand their thinking out by saying, what are all the possibilities? What are your ideas about it? What are all the things you could possibly do? What are 25 ways that you could, bring more of that focus or that intention into your life? That's very expansive. And then at the end of it, we close. So we say that's closing the container. What do we do? Remember, the last part is about committing to action. So we don't have time to break out into this again, but I'm gonna ask you all, based on what you did in this session, is there any homework or any next steps or any ways that you can hold yourself accountable? In a coaching session, you might say, are there ways that you can hold yourself accountable? Is there any ways you would like for me to hold you accountable? Last part of this transformational listening is these last questions. So here's what you will do for yourself in homework. Are there any next steps that you want to take? Is there any homework you want to give yourself? How can we hold each other accountable? So these are questions that you would normally ask in a coaching session to close the session. But because this is a 2-hour session, not 3 anymore, I'll ask you to ask that for yourself. Another follow-up question you can say is, who will you tell, or who can support you? All right, so that is the last part. So I'll ask you all to think about, is there any next steps you can give yourself? Okay,